Good afternoon and welcome to our licensing, planning committee today. Held on the 8th of April. As you can see, we're all on a virtual. So as a result, I'm going to have to call, as they see, a roll call, so people can know that people watching know that we are present. My name is Councillor Gary Marsh. I am the chairman. And my vice chairman is Councillor Philip Coots, who I shall ask to say he's present.
Present.
Okay, then I'll go through the rest of the councillors as they appear on my screen. Councillor Sweatman.
Present.
Councillor Phillips.
Present.
Councillor Pulfer.
Present.
Councillor Eggleston.
Present.
Councillor DeBell.
Present.
Councillor McNaughton.
Present.
And Councillor Cartwright.
Present.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I'm going to, we are joined by officers of Democratic Services, Legal Services and the Planning Division. I'm going to ask for a meeting explanation from our solicitor, Jennifer Bell, please.
In accordance with regulations made by the government at the start of this pandemic, this meeting of the Planning Committee is being held virtually via remote video link. The usual procedural rules for debates apply. Members are in control of their microphones and will be called to speak by the chairman at his discretion. The vote on items 6 to 10 on the agenda will be a named vote, which I will conduct. Members should use that raise hand function to approve the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will give a brief update about the public speaking procedure. People who wish to speak for or against will be given 3 minutes to speak. When their name is called, I would like you to switch your video on and unmic. You'll have the 3 minutes. I will give you 30 seconds from the end that you've only got 30 seconds left. And when I ask you to conclude, can you finish in the sentence that you're on, please? Once you finish speaking, can you mute yourself again and switch your video off again? Right. We do have some ward councillor as well speaking. They will not be restricted the same as other people who wish to speak. We basically allow them to speak as long as they like, but they do know not to speak too long, as we've got quite a heavy agenda today. Item 2 is to receive apologies from absence. We've got apologies from Councillor Walker, and just to brief update, if you may have not heard my vice chairman say, I haven't spoken to him today. He's been signed off from the hospital, making good recovery, so hopefully we will see him again quite soon. Item 3 is to receive declarations of interest from members in respect of the matter on the agenda. Can people raise their hands, virtual hands, if they think they've got a prejudicial or a predetermined? Councillor Phillips. Now you're muted, Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I should declare that I was on the committee, the Planning Committee of Worth Parish Council for DM 204654. I didn't take part in the debate, and I come here with an open mind. Okay,
thank you very much. Councillor Coote.
I have a prejudicial interest in the fact that I called this in to the committee, so I shall not take part in anything. And I understand I'll be muted during the discussion.
I think you'll be taken away into a virtual room as well.
Into the waiting room. I'm glad I've never been there before.
Okay. Now, Councillor Pulfer, I've been made aware that there was a series of emails which, having spoken to the legal officer, we both feel you don't have a prejudicial interest, but do you come to this meeting with an open mind?
Thank you for asking, Mr. Chairman, because I do have to declare that I'm on the planning committee of Hayward Heath Town Council. But having said that, I still come to the meeting with an open mind. Okay,
thank you very much. Nobody else? No, okay. Item 4 is to confirm the minutes of the meeting we held in March. Can we use the raised hand functions if you agree with the minutes, please? Oh, yes, that's good enough. Jen, I think that's a full house, isn't it? It was.
Yeah, I can only see, sorry, I've only just checked. I can only see 3. Oh, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And members of Democratic Services, that's been agreed, those minutes. Can you use my electronic signature on the document, please? Item 5 is to consider any items that I agree to take as urgent business. I do not have any. So we now move to the substantial part of the meeting. And can I ask Andy what the officer to go through the outline of this, please?
Okay, thank you, Chairman. The application before us is for the construction of 2 attached houses together with access and parking on land east of Haycorn in Street Lane in Ardingly. The application site is located on the south side of Street Lane, and it's within the high wheeled area of outstanding natural beauty. There's a group of houses to the north at Holman's, and some semi-detached houses immediately to the west of the site. Just to give you all members the context to this site, this black line is showing the built-up area boundary of Ardingly, so the site is not contiguous with that built-up area, and the site is also subject to tree preservation orders, with 1 lime tree to the front of the site, not 2 as stated in the report, 2 oak trees to the east, and then a smaller oak tree further within the site. The application layout is as follows. There is an existing access to the site located fairly centrally here, and that will be utilised, and that will fork into a shared turning area underneath the lime tree to the front, together with parking spaces to the side of the proposed dwellings, plus a visitor parking space near to the front entrance. Due to the presence of this protected oak tree here, the plot is not divided evenly, so plot 1 will have a much larger garden area than will plot 2. On the ground floor, this is what you would see. A projecting entranceway with living space, and then on the larger plot 1, more living space, kitchen, dining area at the rear, and then 3 bedrooms for plot 2 and 4 bedrooms for plot 1. And in terms of elevations, we're looking at a building to the front, which is not symmetrical in its appearance. It will have elevations with sort of some featured timber detailing, a more traditional style, plus a sort of hipped roof. And then this will be the side elevation with several windows to the east elevation. And then at the rear, a double gable but between the plots, so plot 2 and then plot 1 here, and then this will be the west elevation. This is what the proposed dwellings will look like in context with the existing property immediately adjacent to adjoining the site at Haycorn. So you can see that the semi-detached nature of this property with an extension, and then you've got the electricity substation, and then set lower down the hill will be the new property here. As set out in the planning history in the report, the site previously benefited from a planning permission for 2 dwellings. exactly the same as the proposed development, except for this southwest corner has just been infilled very slightly, and the shared driveway was just located immediately next to the houses, so it's now been pushed away a bit further, sort of towards the road entrance. And that permission lapsed in January this year, but that was made sort of in that permission was given obviously quite recently. And then also, and then this is what the building would have looked like in that context. So very similar to what's now proposed, perhaps just minus a bit more detailing. So in terms of the design, the current scheme does represent an improvement on that previously approved scheme. Also within the planning history was the refusal of free dwellings on this site. The dotted line showed that original 2-unit scheme, which was permitted, and officers felt that because the building was larger, that didn't allow for the parking to be located on that western side, and therefore you had some tandem parking to the front of 2 of those units. Other than that, the development was fairly similar, but in terms of the elevations, this was effectively due to dropping down the hill. This one dwelling to the end was sort of slid a bit down and further forward, and officers considered that looked a bit incongruous as a group of as a terraced group of buildings in relation to the semi-detached nature of the buildings immediately to the west. So just to show members some photos, this is the property at Haycorn here. That's the protected lime tree, and then this is the entrance to the site. You can just see the oak trees protected on that eastern boundary. Looking in the opposite direction, the site entrance, you can see the change of levels, side flank of Haycorn, and then just a bit further below, the site entrance being here. And just another group of photos looking back from within the site towards the properties at Holmans, the protected lime tree here, the protected oak trees here. And then just looking a bit further towards the east, this is the oak tree within the site, T4 on the plan, which acts as a constraint to development. And then the view of Haycorn and the electricity substation, the lime tree here, and then another view just looking back towards Haycorn with the oak tree within the site. So as set out in the report, the application has been recommended for refusal, even though it does not comply with the development plan, but in accordance with the law, other material considerations are considered to apply, which outweigh that conflict with the development plan. And principal amongst that is really the is how recent that planning permission was for the previously permitted scheme, which, as members can see from this presentation, is almost identical to the formally permitted scheme, and hence the application is recommended for approval for those reasons set out in the report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Watt. Just to let everybody know, Councillor Allen has now joined. As you can see, he's here. Unfortunately, because you didn't get to hear the start of it, Councillor Allen, I can't ask you to vote on this item, please. Okay, thank you. Right, any member wish to speak? I think Councillor McNaughton and myself are the local ward members. Councillor McNaughton, do you wish to say anything, or you happy with what you heard and saw?
No, thank you, Chairman. I'm more than happy. We've been full circle on this. We're back to where we should have been, which is 2 units on this particular site. It is quite constrained with the protected trees. We looked at the 3 before and it didn't work, and I believe that 2 is the maximum this site can take. I'm quite happy to support this application, Chairman. As has been said by the officer, it was approved not that long ago. It is just outside the built-up area, but you know, we've got a lot of houses along that side of the road, and even more as you get into the village. So yes, quite happy. I don't see anything wrong with this, but as I say, I can only support this one because it is for 2 units and not rather than the 3. So thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to
Chairman,
move this
if you wish.
recommend.
Do you what? Sorry.
I'll second, Chairman, if you wish.
Yes, okay. Councillor McNaughton to propose and Councillor Coote to second. I just briefly wish to say I concur exactly what my fellow ward councillor says. We're back in full circle. You've had a proposal, you've had a second. The recommendation is that it's subject to completion of a satisfactory section 106 legal agreement and or legal undertaking to secure the required level of SAM and SANG contributions, planning permission to be granted, set out to the conditions set out in Appendix A. And recommendation B is, if not by the 8th of July of this year, he has not signed a satisfactory section 106, then it will be refused. Jen, could you call out members, please?
Yes, so please confirm for, against or abstain to the motion. Councillor Cartwright.
For.
Councillor Coote.
For.
Councillor de Bell.
For.
Councillor Eggleston.
For.
Councillor McNaughton.
For.
Chairman.
For.
Councillor Phillips.
For.
Councillor Pulfer.
For.
And Councillor Sweatman.
For.
Thank you. That's unanimous and carried.
Thank you. That permission has been granted. Thank you very much. Right, we now move on to item 7. It's DM 204372, and we're now in Bolney. And this one is being presented by Catherine Williams. Officer Catherine Williams, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. The application is at Frank's House, Farney Close School, Bolney Court, Crossways, Bolney, and is for the change of use of the building to a teaching suite with includes alterations such as blocking up 2 of the windows, an insertion of 3 smaller windows, and a new canopy to the northern side of the building. The site is located to the northern side of Bolney Road and to the eastern side of Crossways, with the A23 further to the east. The site is part of Farney Close School, which provides educational and residential accommodation for children with special needs. The buildings within the site are clustered, as shown with the cursor, to the southeastern corner of the site, with large areas of soft landscaping and woodland which obscures the whole school from any public views from either of the highways. The site is located within the countryside and the high-wheeled A and B. The buildings within the school vary in design and form, and the application site indicated here is a single-story bungalow, which is located on the eastern end of a line of 3 identical buildings which were granted permission in the 1960s. These were originally given permission for staff accommodation and included a legal agreement which prevented them being used as dwellings separate from the use associated with the school. However, from the planning history, subsequently, it appears that at least from 2002, the application building has been used for student accommodation since that time, and so hasn't been used for staff accommodation for a significant period of time. To the southern side of this line of 3 is another line of 3. It's a very similar single-storey buildings. However, these are used for student accommodation. These are the existing plans of the building. So it's very simple design, and at the moment has sort of been laid out with classrooms, an office, kitchen, and a couple of bathrooms. The proposed plan showed the alterations, so the 2 existing windows would be replaced by 3 smaller windows to change the internal layout from 2 bathrooms to 3 separate WCs, and the rear canopy on the northern side of the building. These show photographs of the northern side and the southern side of the building, and then a couple more showing the relationship with the other 2 identical buildings. Due to the legal agreement, a deed of release is required to allow the change of use of this building, which is considered to be a major variation from the original agreement, and why the application needs to be determined at committee. Given the proposed use for a teaching suite in association with the existing use of the school, and the significant period of time which the building hasn't been used for staff accommodation, it is considered that this agreement no longer serves a planning use. The alterations and the proposed canopy are considered to be modest in proportion to the existing character of the building and the school, with no public views of the proposal, and is considered to be appropriate to the character of the countryside, the landscape of the AONB. The closest neighbouring dwelling is at least 120 metres from the proposal, with no views of the buildings at all, and is not considered to cause any harm to their amenities. Officers consider the proposal is in accordance with the development plan, is recommended for approval, subject to the completion of the deed of release to the original agreement. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Catherine. Very comprehensive. Members, we've only got it here because of this legal agreement. Does anybody wish to debate? Councillor McNaughton.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, known this school for a long time. Remember it well back when it was a girls' school. Fond memories. I see nothing wrong with this at all. As you say, it's here for legal reasons. The alterations seem to make very little difference. And as has been said, it's in amongst other buildings only seen by the school. So move as recommended, Chairman.
Okay. Councillor Coote, are you happy to second that?
I shall happy to second, Chairman.
Okay, right. The recommendation is to approve. It is recommended that, subject to the completion of a satisfactory legal agreement to vary the existing Section 37 legal agreement, planning permission be granted subject to the conditions set out in Appendix A. Jen, could you call out everybody's name, please, whether they're for or against?
Thank you. Councillor Allen.
For.
Councillor Cartwright.
For.
Councillor Coote.
For.
Councillor de Bell.
For.
Councillor Eggleston.
For.
Councillor McNaughton.
For.
Chairman.
For.
Councillor Phillips.
For.
Councillor Pulfer.
For.
Councillor Sweatman.
For.
That's unanimous and carried.
Thank you. That application has been approved. Thank you, Catherine, for your input. You can now leave us now if you wish to. All right, item 8, Councillor Coote, we're about to say goodbye to you for a brief period in time. So could Councillor Coote be moved out of this into the virtual waiting room, please, before we continue? Yep, just as he's okay, he's disappeared. Thank you very much. Right, item 8 is 2-way Station Road, Crawley Down, and this is Joseph Swift's one. So, Joseph, can you run us through why we're here for, please?
Thank you, Chairman. We have a couple of updates for this application. We've received an additional representation letter raising concerns regarding a restrictive covenant on the land. As set out in the report, restrictive covenants are a separate legal matter, so they're not material planning consideration that can be taken into account. In addition, condition 5 on page 84 has been updated to read that no part of the development shall first be occupied until the car parking spaces and garages have been constructed in accordance with the approved site plan. These spaces shall thereafter be retained at all times for their designated purpose. So that's just added the garages section into that condition.
Thank you.
Okay. The application seeks planning permission for the demolition of the existing bungalow and the construction of 3 4-bedroom dwellings. The application site is outlined in red on the plan, with Station Road to the west. We have Vicarage Road to the northwest, Hophurst Drive to the north, and Bowers Place to the sort of southeast. The application site is within the built-up area boundaries of Crawley Down, and as you can see from the location plan and the aerial photo provided here, that the bungalow is currently located in a fairly substantial plot. It's not too dissimilar to the size of the plot to the southwest, which is occupied by Pinewood, De Worden, and the Belfry. The next slide here is the block plan showing the layout of the proposed dwellings. The 2 dwellings at the south of the site are to be identical, and they've been identified as house type A. And to the north, we have a house type B. Each dwelling will have its own access provided to parking and a garage to the side. West Sussex County Council have been consulted on the proposal, and they have provided detailed comments as set out in Appendix D, where they've raised no transport grounds to resist the proposal. For context, we can see the existing elevations of the bungalow. It's fairly simplistic in design. This is to be demolished as part of the proposal to make way for the replacement. The next slide here is house type A. So these are the 2 to the south of the site. These are fairly traditional design dwellings. And house type B located to the north. Due to design, these are considered to be in keeping with the character of the wider street scene. And we have a street scene here to show how the 3 dwellings will appear. And these are the photos. The first photo here is looking from the north of the site back towards the application site. And the second photo is looking towards the south, the Station Road. And we can see, I think it's the first one, is the Belfry here visible. This photo is taken from Station Road. The roof of 2 ways is just visible on the left-hand side, and the neighbouring dwelling, Quintops, is sort of more central to the photo. The following photo is from Bowers Place. Once again, Quintops is visible to the left, and the roof of 2 ways is visible in the background. And the final 2 photos we have here for you is from Hophurst Drive with the house centre on the left, and there's the footpath running to the rear into Bowers Place, and the application site to the right. And the final photo is just of 2 ways from Station Road. The main issues have been set out in the report, and the proposal would provide a replacement dwelling and 2 additional dwellings within a sustainable location within the built-up area boundaries of Crawley Down. The proposed dwellings are considered to be of appropriate design, size and scale, and the plot sizes are considered to be consistent with those within the surrounding street scene. It's not considered the proposal would cause significant harm to neighbouring amenities, and no objection has been raised by a local highways authority. As such, it is recommended for approval in accordance with the conditions set out in Appendix A. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Joseph. We have a number of speakers. I should call them in the order that I've got them. So I'm going to call Councillor John Hitchcock. If you can unmute and switch on your video, please, Councillor Hitchcock.
I cannot switch on my video because the host has stopped it.
Oh, hang on a second.
I can start it now.
Okay, there we can see you now. Okay, you have 3 minutes, and like I said, after 2.5 minutes, I will say you've got 30 seconds left. So when you're ready to speak, your 3 minutes starts.
Thank you, Chairman. The Highways Authority conducted a site visit on the 26th of the 10th, 2020, at approximately midday on a school holiday half-term day. No highway objections were raised. The proposed site does not appear to show any turning facilities, so vehicles may have to exit the site onto the highway in reverse gear. However, once again, the Highways Authority does not anticipate that this would give rise to a severe highway safety concern. However, the Highway Authority seems to have forgotten that pedestrians, including children and parents, are also in the equation. There is no mention whatsoever of the footpath from Vicarage Road to Station Road, which conflicts with this development. 1/3 of the village population live to the west of Vicarage Road, and many use this route to access the village centre, health centre and the school. This proposal will cause a more congested and complex scenario for those wishing to cross, with an inevitable reduction in safety. DP21 says schemes protect the safety of road users and pedestrians. In our view, it makes both worse for pedestrians and car users. DP26 says creates a pedestrian-friendly layout that is safe, well-connected, legible and accessible. It makes it worse and inherently more dangerous. Incorporates well-integrated parking that does not dominate the street scene. The street scene, due to the layout, will be dominated by car parking on frontages. We would suggest that the council puts this project in abeyance and asks the LHA to carry out a revisit at a sensible time on a typical day, say 0800 in the morning to 0930 hours on a midweek school day, and then report their findings. We would also confirm that in our view, this is overdevelopment. Policy CNDP 5B states that the maximum density should not exceed 25 dwellings per hectare. This site at an area of 0.11 hectare can only yield 2.55 dwellings, not 3. Therefore, in our view, it comprises overdevelopment. And finally, should the committee be minded to allow this application, Worth Parish Council requests that they have one sight of the construction management plan prior to approval.
30 seconds, Councillor.
And 2, the general permitted development rights for the garages at these properties are removed to ensure adequate off-road parking is maintained at all times. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hitchcock. Can you mute yourself and switch your video off, please? Thank you. I call Michael Lowe. Mr. Lowe, if you're, yes, I can see your picture there. No, can't see a picture yet. I can see your name, but I can't see you. Can your video be switched on, please?
Right, I'm just trying. Hold on. Start my video.
Oh, there you are. We can see you.
Okay.
Right, your 3 minutes will start from the moment you start to speak, please.
Okay, I've lived in the village for many years and have witnessed numerous near misses of cars travelling at speed towards the village centre on the wrong side of the road of Station Road. I witnessed a motorcyclist being knocked off his motorbike at this junction. I strongly disagree with the advice from the Highways Department, who carried out, as we know, a visit during school term holidays. It needs to be done when the schools are back. The proposal, if permission were to be granted, would, in my opinion, be an accident waiting to happen. The new proposed driveways would not preclude cars from reversing directly onto Station Road. The new, especially the driveway from House B, its location is very much close to the junction. Metro Bus have confirmed to me that they operate 78 bus movements per day along Station Road. Lewis Jackson, who's the development manager there, commented, I would have some concerns if cars would potentially be reversing out onto the road so close to the bend, and any additional road parking may also be an issue. The scheme will clearly generate additional cars to Station Road, which will be an issue for the School Road and Bowers Place. I strongly refute the assertion made in the Mid-Sussex statement that proposal will not result in a demonstrable significant harm to neighbouring residential amenity. The impact is going to be on properties in Station Road, Vicarage Road, Bowers Place and Hophurst Drive. So the Belfry, Pinewood, Woodbridge Haven, Quintop will all be adversely affected for privacy, overshadowing and noise. Be an issue with their back gardens being directly overlooked. Currently we have no privacy or noise issues from a single bungalow. And I think just going on, I think that the street scene, it'd be a conflict with the character of the village. I think it's incompatible with neighbouring houses along Station Road. Mr. Swift didn't mention the fact that Sandy Lane is also not far from the junction with Vicarage Road and Station Road, and I think that anyone who knows the village knows that this is a disaster. So that's all I've got to say, really.
Thank you very much, Mr. Loden. And we use 2.5 minutes. Thank you very much. Can you switch your microphone off and your video, please? I'm going to call David Castles. He's for this application. Mr. Castles, can you unmute and switch your video on, please? There you are. Thank you. Your 3 minutes starts from the moment you start talking, please.
Thank you, Chairman, members, officers, good afternoon. My name is David Castles, and I'm a town planner representing my client, Jamie Copland, who is the applicant for this planning application. Firstly, I'd like to thank officers for a very comprehensive and balanced report. It accurately presents the scheme. My client is an experienced housing developer specializing in small-scale residential infill schemes. Jamie understands that infill developments such as the one proposed here must respect the existing character and appearance of the immediate townscape and the amenities of adjoining and nearby residents. This proposal does just that, hence why it's been recommended for approval by officers. I would just like to remind the members, committee members, why this scheme should be granted. Firstly, the proposal is acceptable in principle for the following reasons. It lies within the built-up area of Crawley Downs and represents a windfall site, both accepted under policy DP9. The neighbourhood plan for the area does not contain any overarching objections to new housing development within or outside the built-up area. On design and parking, the existing bungalow is of no national or local heritage significance that justifies its retention. The proposal will not result in overdevelopment of the site because the site layout, plot sizes and design and appearance of the new houses are in keeping with the existing character of the area, which comprises a mix of house design, styles and materials. As such, the proposal accords with policies DP26, CNDP 04.2, CNDP 05, the SPD and the MPPF. The proposal meets the council's parking standards, will not result in any highway and pedestrian safety issues in accordance with policy DP 21 and CNDP 10. The houses will provide good standard of accommodation for future occupiers as they will exceed the national described space standards. On amenity, the proposed development will be sited a sufficient distance from neighbouring properties so as not to harm the amenities of adjoining and nearby residents by reason of overlooking, loss of privacy, loss of sunlight, daylight, noise, light nuisance, and air pollution in accordance with policies DP26, DP29, and the SPD. On sustainability, the proposal responds to sustainability and future climate change by including a series of design and mechanical sustainable measures in accordance with policy DP39. And on delivering public benefits, the council will receive a new homes bonus which can be used to benefit the local community. The objections raised that our material planning conditions have all been addressed through scheme design and the imposition of the planning conditions. 30 seconds
to go.
Finally, Jamie has agreed to make financial contributions towards the SANG and SAM mitigation approaches developed to protect nesting bird habitats in Ashdown Forest. To conclude, the proposed development is undoubtedly a positive intervention at the site and one which brings with it sustainable long-term solutions for maximising the efficient use of the site in accordance with local planning policies and the core principles of the MPPS. Thank you.
Thank you. That was pretty much down to the second. Thank you very much. If you could switch your microphone off, please, and your video as well. Thank you. Right, members, we've got the local ward councillor, Councillor Gibson. As you're aware, ward councillors can speak a little bit longer, but they know not to test one's patience. So, Councillor Gibson.
I wouldn't dare to test your patience, Chairman. Let me pick up, start by picking up two of the last points made by Mr. Cassells. As I understand it, the new homes bonus is being reviewed this year by the government, and the message which I heard the finance director say when he was going through the plan was that this was expected to be the last year that we would receive new homes bonus. And indeed, we are only receiving new homes bonus for properties that were completed and occupied prior to last week. I'm not convinced that you should be giving any weight whatsoever to the phrase about new homes bonus. And you might want to just consider that. The second point is about contribution to the SANG. And I'm afraid, Mr. Chairman, I really must lament the lack of a SIL policy at this point that would have meant that this development would have paid a contribution towards the school and all the other services in the village that the additional occupants will undoubtedly put pressure on. But I do acknowledge that there is that there will be a contribution to the SANG and possibly to the SAM. Sort of in the future. Councillors, I would hope that you would ask the officer to put back up the photograph that shows the junction. And in particular, I want to draw your attention to the footpath which is north of the Belfry, which is the connecting footpath that leads from Vicarage Road, which serves a large number of properties. In fact, as we've heard, about a third of the properties on the western side of the village, and leads across Station Road to exactly where Two Ways sits. Now, the problem that I have with that is the relationship between the driveways which are proposed for this development and the position of that footpath. I cannot believe that the highways officer has recommended that reversing is okay. I've been walking around a lot of these smaller developments recently, and it seems on almost every occasion that the developer endeavours to provide within the curtilage of the development the opportunity for vehicles to turn and join the highway facing the right way round. And that leads me to a simple observation that could be done on this site if there was 2 properties and not 3. And on that basis, I conclude that this is an overdevelopment of the site. And it is going to lead to a number of problems and issues, which admittedly might be classed as highways, but should also be classed as the implications for the number of properties that could go on that. None of the other properties in that location will require vehicles that enter them to reverse back out. Vehicles are parked parallel in areas of that Station Road, especially when it is school picking up time. And that brings us back to the point of when was this analysis made by highways, and what did they actually see it was doing? A resident told me earlier this week that they'd been in touch with Metrobus, and I'm not sure if I heard the Mr. Lowe comment on that, but I was told that there was 78 bus movements on Station Road in an average day. I presume that's a weekday. That's an incredible number of bus movements, and we're expecting to have vehicles reversing back out at this very difficult junction and possibly compromising sort of other vehicles coming backwards and forwards. So the analysis which I get from that is that this application does not meet the criteria in DP6 to create a pedestrian-friendly layout that is safe, well-connected, legible and accessible. And that is reflected in the Crawley Down neighbourhood plan, which I'll remind you is a made neighbourhood plan, and it's been recently agreed that it does carry full weight. And policy 5 in that requires new developments to provide suitable access and on-site parking such that it does not provide detriment to neighbouring properties. And that the development does not impact acceptably on the local highway network. I apologise for the phone ringing. I can't do anything about that. So I want to essentially focus on that as being the key reason if this came down from 3 properties to 2. And I've seen you debate an application earlier today where very clearly a 2 property development had that turning opportunity. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I apologise for perhaps exceeding and testing your patience.
No. If you no, I would have been okay for a couple more minutes, and then you would have been testing it. Before we go to debate, Councillor Gibson has asked if it's potentially, Mr. Swift, could you put up your picture of this footpath that Councillor Gibson was mentioning? It's the one which the footpath looks like it's just north of the belfry. It's that footpath there.
So yeah, there's a footpath that runs along here on the front of the site, which goes obviously around, and you obviously have the health centre beyond here.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Well, I know this site incredibly well, I must admit. But okay, now can we go? Can you cancel your? Thank you. I do have a couple of speakers. I can't remember who got up first, so I'm going to go as they order in my thing. Councillor Pulfer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would support others in saying that this is an overdevelopment, and I'm particularly concerned also about reversing onto the road by way of designing it. We see in a lot of towns, we have it here in Hayward Heath, where because of the age of the properties, it's the only way you can do it. And so I think that needs to be addressed. If, however, it should be approved, the initial demolition will be, by definition, is going to be noisy. And I think they're all, bearing in mind it's next door to a doctor's surgery, I think there ought to be put some specific times on there when if effectively the doctors and physicians can have some peace and quiet to talk to their patients. And it probably needs to be 8 till 10 and probably 4 till some other time, which of course also then brings us into contravention with the school time. And so I would expect there to be a banksman there at all times for every movement, because this is going to be a very difficult site to access. And I would also want to know that the contractor will be damping down the demolition so that there's not dust going all over the surrounding properties. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Very good points that are, because it is a particularly dodgy junction, to say the least. Councillor Devale.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I tend to agree with our councillor colleague who spoke. I think that this is overdevelopment to put 3 4-bedroom houses onto this spot. And as Councillor McNaughton ably said during a recent application, 3 was too many, 2 was about right. The other thing that I would say is that we've seen a number of applications of late that have been tabletop looked at by West Sussex Highways, when really they should have been looked at under the traffic light system, where they should have actually come and looked at certain times, as we've said, because although the boxes have been ticked, I think that had they looked at appropriate times properly and actually visited the sites, they would have come to different conclusions. Now, we can't actually tell developers to put 2 instead of 3 houses onto this site. All we can do is vote against it. And I strongly feel that this is overdevelopment. I happened to be actually in this spot last week having a look at it, and I remember it very well indeed. And I think for the purposes of highways and danger and to the public and everything else, I ride a motorcycle. I wouldn't like to be riding a bike around that way, I'll tell you, at certain times of the day. So I shall vote against this. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, this is a turning that a road that I use quite frequently, and I'm rather surprised that they're suggesting that there should be more entrances onto this corner, because it is a particularly difficult corner. You know, it's not just a straightforward a bend. It sort of curves left and then right, and with the buses and other movements going down there, lorries going in to service the village, vehicles reversing out of there, I'm extremely surprised that county highways have come to the conclusion that they have. Additionally, as has been said, the plots adjacent to this site are a little bit bigger, or are appreciably bigger than the plots that are being suggested. And I would agree that this does constitute overdevelopment of this site.
Okay, thank you. Before I ask anybody else to speak, Joe, could you put up or give us some information, the northernmost, I think it's House B, whereabouts is the actual road, their entrance onto the road? Whereabouts do they fit into this bend? Whereabouts, how far away from that bend, or are they on the bend?
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just share my screen so you can see where the proposed entrances are.
Please.
So the House B is the top part of the grassed area, or the bottom part of the grassed area, depending which way you're looking at it. And obviously, it has an existing access for the bungalow. So the proposal is just creating these two additional accesses, serving a single dwelling.
Okay, so where's the existing entrance would be in relation to those three entrances right now, please? Do you know offhand exactly where the entrance is?
As you can see on the aerial photo.
Oh, there.
It's
so about where the 29 is, about the 2 of the 29.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Right. Thank you very much. Okay. Can you put us back? Right. Councillor Sweatman, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I won't go on because a lot of the things I was going to say have already been raised. I do know this area quite well, and that is quite a busy route down into the shops, and it's obviously a bus route as well. One of the speakers said, I'm not too sure, perhaps the case officer could explain when highways actually carried out their inspection on this, whether it's done in school holidays or not, because if that was the case, that certainly wouldn't give a true picture. One of my main concerns is that the reversing out onto the road, because there's no turning within the site, and especially as you've just shown on the screen there, that the top house, which is nearer the green bit and the footpath comes down, that is very, very close to that green. And I'm just concerned if you get kids running around there and suddenly the parents are trying to grab hold of them, it's actually that turning to reverse out is too close. But the problem is, I think we're in the hands of highways. If highways say, yes, it's okay, as many times before, what leg have we got to stand on? I find that a little bit disappointing if this went to appeal or anything. So I'm not overly happy, but I don't see where we could go on it. Chairman, thank you.
Well, we've heard a couple of people say overdevelopment of the site. It's the highways. Joe, could you tell us when this actual? I think you said they visited during the school holiday time. Was it October? Did you say? Or
so the site visit was done by highways on the 26th of October at approximately midday.
And that's half term, wasn't it?
I'm not too sure on school holidays.
You're probably too young. Yeah, that would be about half term normally, about that time of the If somebody's got the quick iPhone, they can find out when the school holidays were. But that sounds about like holiday time. But 12 o'clock, well, yeah, okay. Councillor McNaughton.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Very concerned, really, because highways is whenever highways conduct a visit, they will come to their own conclusion. We can all disagree with it, but we're not highway engineers. And at the end of the day, if they did it at 1 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, they will have a database of all the stuff that's carried on around there for years. So they will still argue their case, and to say that they did it in a school holiday, I agree with people, but I don't know that it's a winner. So all I'm saying is be very, very careful. I think there is an argument for overdevelopment, but we can't use a figure of 25 because if you think about it, government a long time ago talked about 30 per hectare. So yeah, we can always get bogged down with that. The other thing is with the highways issue, people can reverse into their drives. Yeah. And I have heard that argued at appeal in the past. And an inspector turned around and said, well, yeah, doesn't just because you can't turn around doesn't mean you don't reverse in. So, you know, to be honest, in my own road, an awful lot of people have to reverse in. They haven't got room to turn around. And they cross a footpath. Every house in our road in Pease Pottage, in the Horsham Road, crosses a footpath. So, you know, just be careful where we go. I don't think you really stand a chance with highways. Overdevelopment I like, and I think, as I said with the other one, sometimes a site can only take X amount, irrespective of its site. It has constraints. I had to go and visit this one. I tried Googling it, I looked at it, couldn't make sense of it. I drove straight past it, I didn't see it. I've got to be honest, it's quite well hidden. When I did find it, I had to scratch my head. I can see the site could take more development, but I don't know that this is right. And to have 3 access points along there, you know, 2 extra, let's not exaggerate. I'm not talking highways concern, I'm just saying, is that the best way of doing it? I would have thought they could have got away with 1 more, but there you go, that's me. But having looked at it, you know, it's a very, very difficult one, but I think we need to be more sort of explicit on what, if people feel strongly enough to refuse it, specific reasons for refusal. Don't just rely on highways. I think we'd be laughed away with that. But it raises concerns. And I scratched my head, as I say, when I got there. I don't particularly like it. It just seems a strange one.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor McNaughton. I know this site incredibly well. This series of those 2 junctions, Hophurst and Station Road, when they come together there, I've got to say, it was in my previous life as a driving instructor, I used to take them down there because I used to scare the bejesus out of them because they didn't know what they were actually doing when they got to that site. And that's why I asked exactly where the previous entrance into this site was. And as Councillor McNaughton eloquently said, would be banging on a loser for highways, even though I think the northernmost one, I don't know what they were looking at. I think that's too close to the junction. But as Councillor McNaughton said, go to most villages, you do have to cross footpaths, because I have to cross a footpath to get out of my house. And because I live on an elevated position, I can only actually, I can drive in, I have to reverse out. It is not, but I've got buses. I've got 78 buses going up and down my road. I must admit, I kept my thoughts to myself at my chairman's briefing because I didn't want to, I wanted to hear what other people were saying. I honestly do think 3 is too much on this site, personally. That's my gut feeling. We can't go anywhere with highways, even though I think they made a mistake. But that's highways, and we've we're sort of baffled by some of the decision making that they do make. But does anybody wish else to speak? No. Councillor de Bow and Councillor Pulford, you did raise your concerns. Do you have a motion as opposed to approval?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, it's just a comment about West Sussex, and it's really following on Councillor McNaughton's concern. When we looked at the earlier one, the street, West Sussex said that it was all just fine, there'd been no accidents in the last 5 years. But of course, the officers very kindly demonstrated what I thought was going to be the situation, that it's a field of a farm. And so probably the tractor went in there 10 times a year. You're not having 10 movements a day. And I really am becoming quite concerned about the comments that we are getting from West Sussex, and it may be something we need to take up with them, because I think they ought to be more positive and as to what is actually going on, rather than just the desktop and saying, well, it's a farm gate, so it's fine. Well, it may have well have been when the tractor came out, few people would challenge it. So I would merely say that I think at times we've got to take on, and irrespective of whether if it goes to appeal that it's won because of West Sussex, then so be it. But I think the mood of the meeting is that it's an overdevelopment and it needs to be re-looked at. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. The field next to Street Lane is an overflow car park for the South of England show, and believe me, those 3 days you don't want to be anywhere near it. Officer wishes to come back on and speak. Mr. Ashdown.
Thank you, Chairman. Just before obviously members go on and consider the matter further, I just want to sort of draw attention to a couple of points. First, in respect of the highways, the comments from the Highways Authority, again, I think we've made it clear that they have visited the site, and in terms of, I think that's set out on page 90 of their on the agenda, that they do make it clear that they're aware that vehicles may need to reverse onto the highway, and even regardless of that, they still don't believe that there is a highway safety issue. So as Councillor Norton has raised and other members, I think from a highways point of view, you do need to take into account the Highways Authority have not objected, and I'm aware of committee's concerns about that, but they are your technical, that is your technical advice, and as officers we would fully support that technical advice that's been given by the Highways Authority. In terms of the issue of overdevelopment, you have to demonstrate what harm is being caused, and while I appreciate you may prefer 2 dwellings to 3, you have to be able to demonstrate quite specifically what harm is being caused. Again, as set out in the presentation, it's shown that in terms of the plot sizes are similar to others within the vicinity. The dwellings themselves, in terms of their scale and proportion, are appropriate within a built-up area. This isn't a conservation area. It's not the High Weald A and B. I'm struggling at this minute in time to see what the harm is in respect of overdevelopment, but obviously I'll wait to see where the debate goes from here, Chairman.
Very wise words. I actually would have cautioned anybody to say anything about highways. We've learnt through our painful experience on many occasions that if highways don't agree with us, we cannot really go against them. They are the experts, all said and done, unfortunately. Sometimes you do query it, but I think that's the way we've got to be on this one. Councillor Phillips, you had your hand up briefly, then it disappeared.
Chairman, I was going to move recommended for refusal on the grounds of overdevelopment of the site.
You've just heard the wise words of our senior planning officer. Yes, you could argue it's overdevelopment, but we've got to.
Well, I feel that the sites are smaller than the adjacent sites.
It does look a bit smaller, I must admit. The 3 that I questioned was the Belfry down towards Pinewood. It is a bigger area than the site that we're talking about. So we could go for the debate of that one. It'd be interesting in what the square meterage on both areas are, but we've been told what this one is because we're dealing with this application. Right, you're proposing that your grounds to refuse on overdevelopment. You feel that this, I'm not trying to put words into your mouth. Do you feel that it has a detrimental effect on the area, having 3 or 2? I don't want to put words into your mouth, but that's the sort of, you've got to just demonstrate, as Mr. Ashton just quite rightly said, we've got to demonstrate there will be harm by having 3 units on this site as opposed to 2 units.
Yes, I do feel it would be detrimental to the scene, to the street scene of the area.
Okay, there was a number of people who spoke against it. Councillor Sweatman, Councillor DeVale, Councillor Pulford, do you agree with that proposal?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
You, Councillor Pulford, sorry, Pulford, are you prepared to second the Councillor Sweatman?
Sorry, thank you, Chairman. Are you asking me for a decision as to whether I agree with the councillors for refusal?
Yeah, we got a new proposal, so the new proposal must be dealt with first before we go to the recommendation, because it is up for approval. And bear in mind,
yeah, but if I come back, what I did say beforehand, I searched with the parking virtually at the top near the green, but I also said I didn't think we had anywhere to go with that on highways. You know, we'd lose that at appeal if it was on that.
Would.
I didn't mention overdevelopment of the site because if you look to the other side, it's got 3 houses in on a similar size plot. And what Mr. Ashdown said is quite right. So I do have agreed with him. So in effect, I should be supporting this application. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, so I won't ask you then. Right, we've got a proposal for refusing. Councillor Phillips has proposed it's an overdevelopment on the site which have a detrimental effect on the area. And Councillor Pulford has seconded that. So hang on a second. Okay. All right. Okay. Members, I'm going to ask you to be taken virtually out of this site, of this meeting briefly, while I have a legal conflab in my ear on the other meeting. So you're going to, could you all switch off your, Councillor McNaughton, before we go to that stage?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I was going to ask you to ask the case officer if he thought there was any likelihood of achieving what we wanted on the overdevelopment from a professional's point of view. To be quite honest, I understand what's being said, but I just worry we don't have very strong reasons for refusal at the moment. And if you're going to refuse, if we're to refuse something, it needs to be as powerful as possible.
Precisely. I think that's why I need to have this 3-way chat. So I do need members to be taken. Okay, I'm going to, you're all going to be muted in your, well, you're not going to be able to hear what I'm about to say because I'm going to be speaking on the Teams network. So I will briefly put you to one side briefly. Okay, thank you very much. That's the first time we've ever used that, so it's good that we've done it. Right, members, before we go to any vote, can we go to page 67 of your report, please? It's under the relevant planning history. Excuse me. It's the last item, which is DM 20/3127, demolition of existing bungalow and erection of four-bedroom houses with associated garages. Now, the officers did have concerns over this. In their mind, it constituted potentially overdevelopment of this site. And before it was determined, the applicant actually withdrew it. So they had concerns that there were 4 houses going on this site, which obviously now they've got 3 houses on this site. I'm only saying that because 4 they thought was too much. 3, that's why it's up for approval. And also from our legal officer, if anybody is going to put an application, a reason to refuse, I do need to know what relevant policies it is drawn up against and the actual harm it does to that policy. And I'm looking at the relevant policies. We've got to make sure that it is against our district plan. So in light of that further information I've just imparted to you, Councillor Phillips, do you still wish to go ahead with the application to refuse?
I withdraw it, Chairman, but I will vote against it.
Okay, I fully understand, and the officers fully understand the members' concerns, but they felt that we needed very, very strong reasons if we were going to refuse it, so that they could go to appeal on our behalf with strong reasons, as Councillor McNaughton quite rightly said just before we went into the sidebar. So, as I've not got a recommendation to refuse, the recommendation is to approve as subject set out in conditions Appendix A. Do I have a proposer to approve the officer's recommendation? Councillor Sweatman, you did say you were not likely to vote against it.
Yeah, I'll propose that, Chairman.
And can I have a seconder, please, if anybody's prepared to second it? Okay, I'm going to have to second it then. Oh, Councillor McNaughton, was that you saying yes, you would? Or yes, Councillor McNaughton has seconded it. I know, members, we are where we are, and Jen, can you go through the for and against, please?
Yeah, so just to be clear, in accordance with the officer's recommendation, planning permission be approved subject to the conditions outlined in Appendix A, including the update to Condition 5, which is in the update sheet. Councillor Allen.
Against.
Councillor Cartwright.
Against.
Councillor DeBell.
For.
Councillor Eggleston.
Against.
Councillor McNaughton.
For.
Chairman.
For.
Councillor Phillips.
Against.
Councillor Pulfer.
Against.
And Councillor Sweatman.
For.
That's 5 against and 4 for. That motion has failed.
Okay. Hang on a second. I just switched it off. I don't know who it is. They'll phone back, so no doubt. Right, so that has been refused. Now I need to know what reasons that is up for refusal. Can I ask the officers, for myself and Jen and the officers, to go into a sidebar? So I'm going to ask Alex, could you take all members out of this, please? Okay. Okay. Okay, thank you. Right, thank you, members. As you probably gathered, a long debate. Mr. Ashdown and our legal officer, we looked at all the policies relating to this development under DP 26, and unfortunately we can't hang a hat on any of those there. However, under policy CDNP 05 of Crawley Down Neighbourhood Plan, D is on page 73. It says the individual plot size is proportionate to the scale of the dwelling. Now, members, if that's where you want to hang your hat on this, I am duty bound to inform you that, you know, this is most likely to go to appeal, and potentially costs will be rewarded against us if we're seen to be acting irresponsible. And members will be who voted to against the officer's recommendation would be expected to attend any future appeal hearing and to defend it to the planning inspector, the reasons why we went along those lines. Now, before I ask you if that's where you want to go, I'm going to ask actually Mr. Ashdown to say a few words. Thank you. Mr. Ashdown.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll be quick. Just in terms of before members make a decision on how they want to go, you need to remember that you need to look at the development plan as a whole. So even if the development does not comply with one policy or even one aspect of a policy, you still need to look at the development plan as a whole. And certainly, as probably you've seen in terms of my responses today, then in terms of the officers consider that the application does comply with the development plan as a whole. And certainly my view is that in terms of the potential reason for refusal that has been muted by the chairman and the relevant councillors, that I think as officers we would struggle to sustain that reason for refusal at any subsequent appeal. So I just wanted to bring those 2 points to the committee's attention, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Well, Councillor Phillips, you've got your hand up. I mean, if the people the councillors who voted against it, if that, I think, going through the neighbourhood plan, and it is a made neighbourhood plan, as Councillor Gibson did mention, so it has got weight, but it is, you know, the district plan is the overarching document. That does look like the only place that we could find. So, Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, and as a separate issue, I don't know if it is permissible. I mean, I have a feeling that even members that voted in favour of it were still concerned about the safety issues. Would it be possible to defer it and go back to the county council and ask them to carry out a more detailed transport assessment at a more reasonable time?
No, I think as we heard from Councillor McNaughton, and you know, it's very wise words, and I too was a portfolio holder of planning, and they will not overturn their own they will not overturn their process on it. That's the sort of thing you may want to raise in a subsequent appeal, but at this point in time, we can't go back to highways and say, oops, you got that one wrong. Can you come back and have another look at it, please? It just doesn't work like that, Councillor Phillips, unfortunately. Councillor Cartwright.
Yes, I can make a sort of point of order that, I mean, we're supposed to be a public meeting, and we've now been off air in the waiting room for quite some period of time when the issue is debated with officers and then comes back to us. Now, this actually doesn't look very good for people who are watching this and for people who have made points. And Councillor Gibson, who made some very pertinent points, which other councillors supported at the time when he had made his presentation. And I think, you know, as a planning meeting, this just don't look good. As a simple point, the officers rejected the 4 housing plan in the first place. and presumably they did it for good reasons. And if they did it for good reasons, then those reasons presumably can apply to the 3 housing solution as well as the 4. So I don't know, but I mean, people seem to have gone into a sort of U-bend on this, and I think that it is not looking good. I'm sorry, and that sitting on the planning committee, I feel that we're being pressured to come up with decisions. Once we make a decision, okay, that we don't have the precise planning details at our fingertips, but we are making honest decisions as councillors. Some of us don't have detailed planning backgrounds or whatever, but we're asked for our opinions and we give them. And that's what's happened. So I personally think that we should stick to our guns.
No, I'm not asking you to go against what you've said. You've made a democratic decision. But when the officers write up the refusal notice, it has to be what's it contrary to. And there is a contrary to, the one tenuous one is the contrary to under the Crawley Down neighbourhood plan. And just to remind you, Councillor, we have had meetings in the chamber where we've had to basically, I've had to take advice from my legal officer and the planning officer while we're in the chamber. And you could argue that's just as bad as you going into think that we can't do that. I can't have Jen Bell sitting on one side and Steve Ashdown sitting on the other side of me. So the only way I can get legal advice, other than leaning back like I used to do in the chamber, to take the advice of my officers from the legal department and planning. That's unfortunately a byproduct of Zoom. And you're right, it may not look good, but unfortunately, that is the only way I can legally take advice. And that would be exactly the same in any committee that we have throughout the country. You can't hear the debate that I'm having, because I wouldn't say the debate we would have in the chamber would be that you would be able to hear what I'm saying anyway, because I would say to members, excuse me, I've got to take some advice here. And that's the only way we can do it is shuffle you out so I can take advice on the team thing. You're right, it may not look good, but unfortunately that's the Zoom regulations.
Yeah. No, it wasn't meant as a personal criticism.
Yes, I know. Okay. Councillor de Bell.
Thank you very much, Joan. On the contrary, I feel that the care that's been taken over this, there's a lot of gut feeling on this, and I have been one to mention my gut feelings. You've mentioned yours, Mr. Chairman. I think that that's all very well and good, but I hope that the people out there that watch this will see the level of professionalism and the dedication to trying to find out the best way forward that you and the officers indeed have showed. So I hope that we will all go with that and that people will see that. Thank you.
Okay. Well, it has been refused. So Councillor McNaughton.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. No, I hear what you said. What you have to remember, at the District Planning Committee, on at least 2 occasions, the chairman has actually had to vacate the council chamber and take legal advice from officers in private. It's not a new issue. It's happened before, and it happened in the council chamber. So we have done it that way. I'm a little bit concerned with the comments made that what we've got is an indefensible position. This means that refusing this application, it goes to appeal, we won't defend it. I think
Mr. Ashdown said they will endeavour, but the grounds to defend it on are very small. Mr. Ashdown, could you just clarify what you said, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. What I'm suggesting is I think we will find it difficult to sustain a reason for refusal. The only reason that I've heard mentioned so far from committee relates to the plot sizes, and the plot sizes having a detrimental impact on the character and appearance of the area. Now, as I say, that's what I've heard from committee, and and say, given my professional opinion to you, then obviously officers will put forward that case if that's what the committee so decides. But I think that reason for refusal would be difficult to sustain, Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, you're the case officer and you've got your hand raised. So do you wish to add anything before I go back to Councillor McNaughton?
Hello?
Right, you're unmuted.
Yep. Sorry, no, I didn't mean to raise a hand if I have. So.
Okay, you have. You've got a little white hand there for looking at me. Okay. All right, Councillor McNaughton.
No, I hear what's been said, but quite often it has happened in the past where we've got to appeal and we've not offered any defence to keep the costs down. So all I'm saying is that we don't have a defensible position at the moment, as I can see. So just a word of warning.
Okay, thank you. Well, the councillors who voted against, and I'm not trying to change your mind. We've had a democratic decision. Are you happy to proceed on the reasons to refusal? There's nothing under our district plan, but there is a policy under Crawley Down Neighbourhood Plan CDNP 05D. Are you happy? Can you just give me some indication you're happy for that reason to refuse? Right, I've got a yes from Councillor Eggleston. All the five and Councillor Pulfer, Councillor Phillips, Councillor Cartwright, Councillor Allen. You're not happy to proceed, but I've got to go with the democratic. You didn't vote for it, so I've got to go forward. Happy for it to proceed. So I'm just going to speak to Jen on Teams, but you're not going to stay out of the go out the meeting because it's just a quick. Right. The advice I've just been given is we need I need a proposer and a seconder for reasons to refuse. This is reasons to refuse. And so whoever's going to propose it, I've given you my indication to where you possibly go, but you've heard the advice from the officers. I need a proposer to announce a reason to refuse and a second. So Councillor Eggleston, you're going to propose that under the Crawley Down Nash Neighbourhood Plan?
Yes, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pulfer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was rather assuming that one of the Crawley Down councillors would like to second that.
Okay, I've got Councillor Phillips has put his hand up for that one. And the advice I've gone, that's the reasons to refuse. So it is being refused, so it is the reasons to refuse. I do need another vote on that for that reasons to refuse. So Jen, could you go through again? And is that D of Crawley Down Neighbourhood Plan CDNP 05 subsection D? Individual plot sizes are proportionate to the scale of the dwelling. I take it that's the reasons you're going to hang the hat on.
Can I clarify why does the proposer not feel that the plot sizes are proportionate to the scale of the dwelling? Why does it not comply with paragraph D? That's what I need to know.
Yeah, Councillor Eggleston.
Could the officer advise me?
Which officer you want? Legal or planning?
Planning, because because clearly it was discussed amongst yourself and the officers, and they came back and said that could be the grounds that we would refuse. So if they could give me the detail that they gave to you,
sorry, Councillor
that would help
Eggleston,
me.
that was on the basis of what we had gleaned from the debate before that advice. So it needs to come from you. Do you think it complies or doesn't comply with paragraph D? From once you explain why, we can then help you elaborate on that reason. If there's something else, another policy, but we need to have that discussion with you.
Okay, I'm happy to defer to Councillor Phillips.
He's the local ward councillor. Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I would say that the proposed plots are smaller to the adjacent plots in the area.
So you would say that, so it does
it's conform with
it's against the policy CDNP05 subsection D. It's contrary to that.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. And you're happy, you're seconding it, aren't you? Councillor Eggleston, you're proposing. Are you happy to that?
I am.
Okay. Jen, could you go through the votes, please? Because I think there might be some abstentions here.
Okay, so this is a refusal against officer recommendation on the basis that it is contrary to policy CDNP05 of the neighbourhood plan. Paragraph D, the plot sizes are not proportionate because they are smaller to adjacent plots in the area. Please confirm for, against or abstain to the motion. Councillor Allen.
My camera's not working, but I abstain.
Okay.
Councillor Cartwright.
For.
Councillor de Bell.
Abstain.
Councillor Eggleston.
For.
Councillor McNaughton.
Against.
Chairman.
I'm going to abstain.
Councillor Phillips.
For.
Councillor Pulfer.
For.
And Councillor Sweatman.
Against.
That's 4 for, 2 against, 3 abstentions. The motion's carried. Permission refused.
Okay, thank you. Well, we get all the easy ones, don't we? Thank you. Right. Item 9. We've been at this for nearly 2 hours. Do you need normally we would comfort break for 5 minutes, or do you wish to just go straight forward? No. Where did members feel?
Can I have a 5-minute comfort break, Chairman, please?
Okay, I think, okay, well, the time I make it is on my computer is 17:52. Can you be back at no later than 17:57, please? Can you just switch off your video cameras, please?
No, we're having a break.
think we're just waiting for just a couple of members to get back in front of their screens before we can continue. Councillor Allen's back, Councillor Pulford, Jen. I'm waiting for Councillor Coote to be allowed back in. Could somebody let Councillor Coote back into the main meeting, please? Because he's still probably... Oh, right. Councillor Coote, if you can hear, could you switch your camera on, please? Councillor Coote, we need to be able to... Thank you. Thank you very much.
I did it when I was informed to do it.
Okay,
I
brilliant.
had tried previously.
Right, brilliant. Okay, well, welcome back. We're now moving on to item 9, which is DM 210165 Mill Nursery, London Road, Sussex. We've got a presentation I got down as Joseph. I thought Andy Watt was doing this one.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman.
You are doing it.
Yeah. The application is for the demolition of 6 existing buildings on the site at the former Mill Nursery, London Road in Sussex, and the erection of 3 4-bedroom dwellings plus a 4-bedroom replacement dwelling, together with associated parking, amenity space, and landscaping. The application site is located on the western side of the A273 between Sussex and Burgess Hill. There's 2 houses opposite, and the site is accessed via a shared driveway which then forks off, serving commercial and 2 further dwellings towards the west. The site is accessed in that northern fork and consists of 6 buildings formerly in use as a nursery. So I'll just go through these buildings. This is a building that's just been recently fire damaged. This is a brick building associated with the nursery. This was the main glass house. This building is no longer here, and this building here is the former dwelling with a detached double garage. The site is very overgrown, as we'll see from the photos, which I'll present later on. But broadly speaking, the site is very heavily wooded, particularly in this area here, and also in this area here, and well screened also to the front. It's surrounded by an open field here and on this side, and there's a public footpath that runs that runs alongside the river, connecting towards the A273. So the application seeks to construct 3 dwellings pretty much on the location of the existing main glass house for the site, arranged in a courtyard formation around a landscaped area, and with a car barn for 6 spaces in place of the existing fire damaged building, a small area of parking also for this group of buildings, and then utilising the sort of an existing access to the replacement dwelling, which will have pretty much the same curtilage that it had previously. In terms of the floor plans, the northernmost new barn will contain 4 bedrooms, and a feature of this in a barn style is a central entrance with a sort of double height area around the staircase, with sort of directly on looking up towards roof lights above, with accommodation occupying the remainder of the building. And in terms of elevations, the building has been designed in a quite rural style, arranged over 1.5 stories with black horizontal weatherboarding for the elevations with a clay tiled roof and conservation type roof lights above that with feature openings to the side and at the main entrance. Plot 2 is the most westerly of these new dwellings. Different style. This will again be 4 bedrooms, but the void area above the staircase will be at the back of the building rather than immediately at the entrance to the property. And you can see that this is what the entrance would look like with the windows above, and then the entrance or the staircase area at the back of the site. And again, sort of similar materials. And then the new plot 3 to the south of the site, again, very similar in terms of layouts to plot 1, again 4 bedrooms in total, and then this time round just with a asymmetric pitched roof, similar materials as before. And then for plot 4, this will be arranged predominantly over 2 stories rather than 1.5. This is a replacement dwelling with a extension, single-story extension at the back, and then you can just see sort of similar sort of detailing to the barn buildings, double height entrance, the single-story extension at the rear, clay tiled roof, weatherboarding on the first floor above a brick elevation on the ground floor. And this is just to show the site sections, just some coloured drawings. This is showing a view from the centre of the site. So you're looking at the side elevation of plot 2, the rear elevation of plot 1, and then the house, the replacement dwelling beyond that. Then in the second section, it's looking back towards the side elevation of the car barn. And again, sort of similar elevations on that final section. As set out in the planning history, a previous scheme was refused by the council for a replacement dwelling, which is here, and 3 dwellings fairly centrally within the site. And these 2 buildings were to be demolished as part of that, and instead the car parking would be arranged within this central area. So this would be an area of hard standing here, and then these green areas are going to be single-story garages, and then the main bulk of the house of the houses here. And if I can just show you some visualizations of those dwellings, they're sort of very urbanized in its architecture. This was sort of the central area of hard standing that was referred to, and just one more here. So a distinctive style, but the inspector in determining the application felt that that was a very urbanizing form of development in this rural locality. And then this was the replacement dwelling, differing style and differing use of materials. So the development didn't quite hang together as consistently as the current proposal does now. So I just run members through some photos of the site. So this is the main London road with the entrance to the site. And as you go further into the site, this is a fork towards additional dwellings and development. This is a gate to the field in front of the site between the A273 and the woodland area, and then this is the access to the site. And a view from over that gate, that metal gate, towards the site, you can see how well screened it is at the moment. This is just the brick building in the next photo, which is here. And then this is the fire damaged building just in front of that, which is here. That's the most southeasternmost building on the site. Further within the site, this is a view looking westwards towards the large glass house within the centre of the site, and then just turned round towards the driveway leading up to the house. So you can, don't know if members can just make out the roof of the house just beyond that, and then you can see that's been fenced off from this driveway. Within the site is this dilapidated bungalow, and next door to that is the existing double garage, and you can see in what state this building now is in. Doors are open, windows are all smashed, graffiti, all sorts of detritus and litter in that area, and very overgrown. This is a view towards the back of the existing dwelling within that woodland area. And then this is a view looking towards the rear of the main glasshouse building, and then the other building that was shown on the block plan as one of the 6 buildings to be demolished. That no longer exists, but you can see here that it's still got all the planting staging and the pots all lying around, and then this is looking back sort of in an easterly direction to the side elevation of the main glass house, or the brambles on the site, and then this is looking back towards the fire damaged building in the southeast part of the site. This is just a closer view of that fire damaged building, and then another view looking back towards the site entrance. And then the final image is just showing the site through the field from the public footpath. So the main issues are as set out in the report, in that the proposal is contrary to the development plan, and that is set out in the principle of development section of the report. But it is considered that the appeal decision for the previous 3-unit scheme, which was dismissed, constitutes a material consideration of such weight that it outweighs the harm, or it outweighs the conflict with the development plan. I think it's probably useful just to re-emphasise certain points that the inspector made in that appeal decision. We originally, the council originally did not consider the site to be sustainable, but the inspector disagreed with that, and this was set out in his decision, that he found it to be a suitable location for development. We also note that the site is located within a local gap between Sussex and Burgess Hill. But again, the inspector did not consider that the proposal would result in the coalescence of those two settlements as a result of this development. Finally, the main reason why the inspector refused the application was because he considered that to be a urbanizing form of development, which was out of keeping with the rural character of the area. And in response to that, the applicant has designed a scheme which officers consider addresses that issue completely. So it's a much more barn style development, which is appropriately sited, scaled, and also designed well in terms of its use of materials, and it hangs together with the replacement dwelling. So for the reasons set out in the report, the application is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Did you hear that, Chairman? I'm muted. Hello?
Right. Hopefully it's unmuted itself. I did press on it, but anyway, we've got 3 speakers. Those who've been around a lot longer than some will know who the first speaker is, because she was an officer of this council. So I'm going to call Councillor, which I don't think I'd ever would say that, Councillor Claire Tester.
Thank you, Chairman.
Right, Councillor Claire Tester, you have 3 minutes. The moment you start to speak, your timing starts, and after 2.5 minutes, you'll get a 30-second warning. Councillor Tester.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman and members. So I'm speaking to you today on behalf of Sussex Parish Council. Proposed application would be located in the Burgess Hill Gap, as defined in Policy 1 of the Sussex Neighbourhood Plan. The application is for the replacement of 1 dwelling, previously associated with a rural business, with 4 new dwellings to create a small development within the countryside. Therefore, the Parish Council considers that this proposal is contrary to Policies 1, Burgess Hill Gap, and 9, Character and Design of the Sussex Neighbourhood Plan. The committee report acknowledges the conflict with the adopted District Plan and Neighbourhood Plan, but places more weight on the appeal decision for the previous proposal, on the grounds that it was only dismissed on design grounds. However, the inspector's concerns were far more wide-ranging than simply the cosmetic appearance of the dwellings. He was concerned about the scale and mass of the 3 additional dwellings, which were significantly larger than the existing nursery buildings, the significant levels of hard standing throughout the site, which he considered would create an urban sprawl that would damage the character of the site, and the significant amount of woodland which need to be cleared, which he felt would result in the character of the site being entirely transformed into an urban scheme, which he described as an alien and ungracious encroachment into the countryside. The design now proposed still shows 3 large dwellings in very similar positions to those previously dismissed on appeal. Whilst they're technically 1.5 stories rather than 2 stories, the very large roofs mean that they are still much bulkier than the existing nursery buildings. Car parking has been relocated from between the dwellings to the site entrance, but still results in significant areas of hard standing. Lastly, the development would still result in clearance which would affect the character of the area and wildlife. The submitted ecology report describes the woodland blocks, mature trees, semi-improved grassland and scrub as being suitable habitat to support protected species, and notes that 4 heron nests were found in conifer trees to the north of the site in 2019. So in conclusion, it's considered that the proposed scheme does not overcome the inspector's reasons for dismissing the previous appeal and would result in a development that would conflict with its rural setting and have a harmful urbanising effect on the area that is currently rural and tranquil in nature.
30
and of
seconds,
great benefit.
Councillor Tester.
and of great benefit to wildlife. The Planning Committee is respectfully asked to refuse planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tester. Could you mute yourself again and switch your video off, please? Thank you very much. And we have Chris Barker, the agent, speaking for this application. Mr. Barker, could you? Yep, there you are.
Thank you, Chair.
Well, 3 minutes will start from the moment you start to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. The scheme before you this evening relates to the demolition of existing buildings and the erection of 3 4-bedroom dwellings and 1 replacement dwelling, all at the former Mill Nursery site at Sussex, which has fallen into dereliction and disrepair. This application has been submitted following the previous appeal and subsequent pre-application discussions with both the planning officer and design officer at Mid Sussex District Council. We've worked proactively with both officers and statutory consultees to address all the previous concerns of officers and the previous inspector. In terms of the principle of residential development at the site, it has been accepted by the planning officers within the accompanying report that residential development of 3 new dwellings and 1 replacement dwelling is considered acceptable, given the comments of the planning inspector in previous appeal decision and given the careful rural design of the dwellings, which are significantly reduced in scale from the appeal scheme. As set out within our supporting letters, the design, form and appearance of the dwellings is considered to be acceptable, as the current scheme reflects the rural character of the immediacy through the use of natural materials, and this is acknowledged by the planning officer and design officer in their report comments. The proposals therefore result in a development of the highest design quality that enhances the rural environment within which the site is located. The form and scale of development has been significantly reduced as set out before. And it also reduces the level of car and larger vehicle movements on and off site and from the former nursery site use. The site is sustainable, as noted by the previous inspector, within walking and cycling distance to local facilities and services in both Sussex and Burgess Hill. In this regard, the site cannot be considered remote or unsustainable, and this has previously been accepted by the planning inspector and officers of your council. The proposal does make efficient use of the land, but maintains its rural tranquility, utilising most of the existing building footprints on site, as well as proposing a more appropriate form. The lower level 1.5-storey dwellings would represent a 34% reduction in built form on the site when compared to the existing, and removal of significant areas of hard surfacing, shingling and other matters associated with the former nursery use. As confirmed by the relevant consultees, the proposal would be acceptable in terms of residential amenity, highways, drainage,
30 seconds, Mr.
sustainability,
Barker.
contamination, heritage, trees and biodiversity. Overall, therefore, the proposals would provide a high-quality residential development in a sustainable location and can be delivered without any harmful impact on nearby properties, wildlife and nature. Furthermore, the proposed development will be sustainably constructed and will lead to enhancement of biodiversity and the trees and arboriculture in the site. We hope, therefore, you will support your officer's recommendation of approval.
Okay, thank you very much. Very well timed. Possibly 2 seconds is over, but not bad. Not bad at all. Mr. Barker, can you switch your mic? You've done it. Thank you. And we do have the local ward councillor, Councillor Sue Hatton. If you can unmute Councillor Hatton, there you are. As before, members and to the watching public, Councillor Hatton is not subject to the same 3-minute rule, but as always, I do request that they keep it succinct. Thank you. Councillor Hatton.
Thank you, Chairman, and good afternoon or good evening now, members. The history of this site is indeed complicated, and the various applications have come into conflict with the MPPS, the district plan, particularly DP12, and the MAID Sussex neighbourhood plan under policy 9 specifically, and was referred to by the inspector, and then ultimately with the appeal inspector himself, leading to him dismissing DM 193716. Both applications, DM 180581 and DM 193716, were refused by the MSDC planning officers as being contrary to DP12 because the dwellings are located within the countryside and occupying a location where the character of the surrounding area is verdant and rural in nature, and because of the adverse visual impact of the development and urbanisation of the site. In the report before you, a lot has been made of the various comments in the inspector's report that appear to dismiss the effect that 4 new houses would have on the local gap between Sussex and Burgess Hill, and basically the only reason for refusal was on the grounds of design. However, the new application is very similar in lots of ways to the one that was previously refused and dismissed on appeal, i.e. the same number of dwellings, a similar horseshoe configuration, the need for a large number of trees to be removed, 15 in all with pruning of 4 trees, and the proviso of other clearance work that may be needed to accommodate movements of heavy vehicles on site. Yet the officer's report on page 117 states that the impact of this development would be extremely localised due to the dense screening, so would not impact on the wider landscape. And I don't know if we've had the awaited tree officer's council's report, which is mentioned on page 127. Also, more house standing is provided to accommodate cars for the increased number of beds. 3 4x bed houses and the 4-bed replacement bungalow in the new application instead of 3 3-bed houses and the 4-bed bungalow in the rejected application. The inspector deemed that DM 193176 was an ungracious encroachment into the countryside, which has already been mentioned by Councillor Tester. Point 7, page 2 of the appeal decision letter, it's mentioned there as well. So I'm very surprised and a bit disappointed that the council's architects panel were not involved in the decision as to whether the design of the houses and the site configuration were indeed an improvement on the appeal dismissal. Where I am particularly confused, and I am sure the committee will wish to have clarification on this point, is with regard to the fallback position. That's page 18 for members on their report, and it's about halfway down the page. Here the report links the inspector's comment that the design in DM 193716 would be a far more sprawling development of considerable mass than the fallback position. In his appeal dismissal letter, page 4.22, the inspector refers to the fallback position as being the renewed approval dated January 2020 for a total of 3 one-bed dwellings, which replaced the lapsed approval application DM 161087. In his words, a succinct and compact development. He further stated that even if the fallback were to be implemented, it would be less harmful than the appeal scheme, and as such, he did not consider that the fallback would justify the proposal DM 193716. As I have already mentioned, the new application is extremely similar to the appeal application in its mass, and therefore the inspector's comments would still be applicable to this current application, which is something I think we should pay great attention to. I therefore ask members to refuse this application, allowing the fallback position approval for 3 one-bed dwellings to stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hatton. We did lose you briefly, but we heard everything you said. Now, before we go to any debate, can you mute and switch your video off, please? Can we, before we go to any debate, can I just ask Mr. Watt about this fallback position and the main reasons why you feel that the application has overcome the inspector's comments? Because we've heard that from Councillor Hatton and Councillor Tester that they feel that it hasn't overcome. But can you tell the members about this? I know it is on the page 108 underneath what we refused it last time. Can you tell members what this fallback position is and the main reasons why you feel that this has overcome the inspector's decision, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. This fallback position referred only to the two buildings in the far southeast corner of the site.
The one which has been burnt down?
One of which has been burnt down now, so
Okay.
the other one does remain.
Mhm.
So it might well be debatable whether actually, you know, that prior approval can be implemented in full, because the whole point of that legislation was to allow the sort of conversion of building with reasonable building works associated with that, rather than a demolition and a rebuild of such buildings. Of course, if that had been implemented, then that would be juxtaposed with the derelict dwelling to the north, and then the derelict nursery buildings in the centre of the site. So whether that would have actually been carried out by the developer is is obviously unknown. But the application has come forward in response to the inspector's appeal decision, which really was dismissed for the reasons I set out in the report, really only on design grounds. Now that is really the sole issue, but between the two particular schemes. Now, I don't think anything was really said about the configuration of these three dwellings within the centre of the site, and I think it's I think it's quite reasonable, in my professional opinion, to have the buildings sited as closely as possible in relation to the previous buildings. And this time round, rather than the buildings all converging on this hard landscaped area, it will be now a soft landscaped area with no car parking within that area. So that would reduce the hard standing that Ms. Tester has referred to in her comments to the committee today. And then bear in mind, obviously, that the site already benefits from a long driveway to the garage of the main bungalow. So it again, it's not deemed unreasonable to continue that and to have that dwelling in fairly close proximity, pretty much to the same area of the site as the existing bungalow is. But I think it's important really to probably say that according to the application, I think there was sort of 1,302 square meters of existing buildings on the site. And the proposed scheme, it excludes the garage building to the southeast. That's 860 square meters. The previous scheme for comparison was 868, so I appreciate there's an 8 meter difference in the footprint of the building. But in terms of the volume of the building, obviously, we've now moved from a 2-story sort of group of 3 buildings to 1.5, so that has reduced the bulk of the building quite substantially now. The developer has stated that the previous cubic meterage of that was sort of just at 3,054 cubic meters, and that has now been reduced to 2,238. So you can see in terms of the bulk that from a mathematical point of view, that scheme has now gone quite some way to addressing the inspector's concerns. And then I think finally, just in terms of the visual appearance of the buildings, you saw a very urbanizing form of development that wasn't very unified across the development, and that has now been amended to become a more rural set of barns, traditionally designed, my professional view is the architecture is perfectly appropriate for this rural location, and that's that's why the application has been recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watt. My Vice Chairman, Councillor Coote.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, we've heard this is a very concise report, all 42 pages of it. I don't propose to repeat everything that Andy Watt has said, but I would say this, that it's a patch of land in the middle of very nice countryside, which is an absolute nutter eyesore. And if it's not cleaned up, something untoward is going to happen. I won't go into that. And so therefore, I think what's been proposed is quite nice. It gives us another 4 houses in the area. And I would move as recommended, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Any other member wishes to speak? Councillor Pulfer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we need to be really pragmatic about this, in as much as I have read with interest the parish council's comment and listened to councillors' comments as well. But effectively, one day something is going to happen there, and it needs to happen, because I'm assuming we don't just want to leave it as a derelict site. And so I would support it. The only comment I would make is that I noted with interest that the houses have got chimneys, and from what I'm gathering, even our wood burners, not that I say our, I haven't got one, but I think that we shall find that even wood burners within 5 years will be consigned to the same as the coal fires, Mr. Chairman. So I'm surprised.
Dummies.
Yeah, I've got a wood burner. If you've got one in, I think what you're referring to is a report which came out a while ago, but I think it was Secretary of State at the time, Michael Gove, about wood burners. I think it's to do with new wood burners from there on after, not current wood burners, because you have to take out virtually every countryside house, because that's.
And also, Chairman, if I may, you have to burn wood that is matured, not.
Yes, I know. Not what they call greenwood. Not greenwood. Yeah.
So may I finish, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, of course you can. Sorry, I thought you had finished. I thought you had finished. Sorry.
Well, I only finished because everybody interrupted, Mr. Chairman. But be that as it may, I see nothing in the report about sustainable heating, and I don't know. Given where it is, I don't know whether it's oil fired or what, but I would just ask the developer, perhaps if they have a look at that and make something sustainable for the future. But other than that, Mr. Chairman, I think we've got to be pragmatic, and I think we need. I will certainly be supporting it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Eggleston.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So, I think the first observation I would make, I know the site well, and it is a derelict site, and it is in a state. However, it's incumbent upon the owner of the site to maintain their site in proper order. So I don't think we should be using planning policy just because, or planning approval just because the site is derelict. The owner should should ensure that their sites are maintained properly. My starting point is that this is contrary to 3 Premier League district plan policies: DP6, DP12, and DP15. And I would have thought that if you can't get past those, it doesn't really matter how good the design is and how sustainable they are, and whether you have wood burning fires or windmills on the roofs. You've got to get past 3 big hitting district plan policies for this to be acceptable. And we argue all the time as a district council about building onto major settlement hierarchies, and yet we have an application which is slap bang in the middle of a strategic gap between Burgess Hill and Sussex, and we think that's okay, and I don't think that's okay. And I also don't believe, when you look at the district plan policies that we say that it complies with. I don't think that it complies with DP21. To say it's within walking distance of Burgess Hill, no one is going to walk from this site to Waitrose in Burgess Hill, do their week shopping and wheel their trolley back again. They will go in a car to do it. So I don't think it complies with DP21 and sustainable transport. And I am really concerned about DP13 because although this development on its own doesn't bring about coalescence, we all know the pressure on the two strategic gaps between Sussex and Burgess Hill, this one that goes up to the A23 and the one that goes up Hockley Lane and Keema Road. And the challenge that we will have as a district council if we allow this application is that you will get housing development by accretion on this area and will erode the already shrinking strategic gap between Sussex and Burgess Hill. And for those reasons, I would oppose this policy. And I would also add, listening to Councillor Tester's analysis of the inspector's appeal dismissal last time and the way that it's been presented in the report, I'm not convinced that we are necessarily seeing the full range of the inspector's view of the previous appeal dismissal in this report. And I think this is a worrying development, and I would oppose this application.
That's all right. You didn't hear the dog barking. That's fine. You didn't hear that then. Before we go to the next speaker, I need to speak to Mr. Ashdown because I've got a feeling we don't have a strategic gap policy. We do, if I'm right. I think in the DP. We weren't allowed to include that. Councillor McNaughton, can you? I don't think we've got a strategic gap now. We were told we weren't allowed to have strategic gaps by the inspector. Yes, please. Councillor, no, Councillor, sorry, Mr. Ashdown, you're not a councillor.
I'm not a councillor, but thank you, Chairman. Just in terms of the points raised by Councillor Eggleston, I think all of those issues that is raised in terms of development in the countryside, sustainability, were all matters that, well, were the reasons that we refused the previous application on the site and were matters that were in front of the inspector. Unfortunately, the inspector didn't agree with us on the sustainability of the site. Therefore, while I fully appreciate the concerns about the sustainability, given the inspector's views on that, then unfortunately we don't have anywhere to go in relation to that point. I think the nub of the issue is here, and as set out by Andy Watt and as alluded to both by Councillor Hatton and Councillor Tester, is it comes down to whether the committee consider that the scheme before them addresses the inspector's concerns about the form of development, the design of development, and whether it's appropriate within its rural location. The principle of development, unfortunately, and again, we have sympathy with that view, has gone, but by the appeal inspector's decision. So what we are talking about now is essentially the design and form of the development and whether it's appropriate in its rural setting. Obviously, the officer view in front of you is that the scheme now proposed does address those inspectors' concerns, and despite the conflict with policy in terms of the principle of development in this area, given the appeal, the other material considerations, which includes the appeal inspector's decision, that the scheme is acceptable and can be supported. So I think that's really where members should focus their consideration, Chairman.
Yes, unfortunately, I think you're absolutely right. Can you just address the, I've got a feeling we don't have strategic gaps anymore. I seem to recall no strategic gaps in any of the policies. We don't want coalescence, but that doesn't class as strategic gaps. Is that correct?
That's how the policy deals with coalescence. So it's not called a strategic gap anymore. It's the same. So. It's just called coalescence rather than a strategic gap, Chairman. The principles of what it was trying to achieve are exactly the same.
Yeah, unfortunately, this has happened too often. When the inspector says something, it does tend to tie our hands. And as Mr. Ashdown's just alluded to, really what we've got is, do we like the design of what is in front of us in the countryside? Councillor Cartwright.
A lot of what I was going to say was actually already said by Councillor Eggleston. But I mean, in terms of addressing the bit about the gap, Sussex has got a neighbourhood plan. And I remember that Councillor Tester referred to, I think it was section 1 and 9 of the Sussex neighbourhood plan, which does specifically talk about the gap between Sussex and Burgess Hill. And also Burgess Hill has got a neighbourhood plan. And again, it refers to the gap, and both towns want to protect the rural countryside between the two. And we have a long history of developers encroaching on our green space, and they're being resisted. So I mean, I don't think it's strictly true that there isn't anything about gap, because my understanding was that once we had a district plan, then that gave teeth and authority to the neighbourhood plans, which we put a lot of time and effort into developing. And then you've got DP, whatever it is, 13 about coalescence, DP 12 protection of the countryside. We've got DP, another DP 15 about building in the countryside. There's a heck of a lot in the district plan about protecting the countryside. And I listened carefully to what both parish councillors were saying, that we as a planning committee should be giving what Councillor Eggleston referred to as the Premier League policies within our district plan. And right up front is protecting countryside gaps between the towns. And there's a bigger Burgess Hill councillor, I know there's very, very strong feeling in both Sussex and Burgess Hill about protecting this green space, and were it not for reasons beyond our control, it was, Burgess on a national park. It's not actually in the national park, but it's countryside, which you can see from the South Downs. It is a very beautiful countryside, and I think we should be cognizant of that. And I think the points were made very explicitly and well by both councillors that spoke on the subject. Thank you.
Ordinarily, Councillor Cartwright, I would 100% agree with you, but unfortunately, you've got to take on board what the planning inspector says. And as much as we dislike what he says, we don't sometimes like it when he dismisses. We like it when he dismisses an appeal. We don't like it when he allows an appeal. But Mr. Ashdown's got, he wants to quote a specific part of that appeal decision, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to sort of clarify the issue about coalescence. So the inspector did consider policies 1 and 9 of the Sussex neighbourhood plan, and he considered the issue of coalescence, specifically of coalescence. Paragraph 9 of his decision letter, he states, "I'm satisfied that the proposals would not result in the risk to the coalescence of settlements. Nevertheless, this does not render the harm to development considered in its entirety acceptable." So what he's saying is, in terms of coalescence, he didn't believe the development of the site would result in coalescence, but as previously explained, he did identify harm in terms of the form of development, in terms of he didn't believe that essentially it was appropriate in its rural setting. So in terms of DP12, which I've heard mentioned, then that is still a relevant policy, and DP12 seeks to protect the country, the intrinsic character and beauty of the countryside. That is still relevant. So it goes back to the point that I made previously, is what you need to consider is in terms of the form of the development, in terms of its scale, layout, etc. Has that addressed the inspectors' concerns? It's not down to the principle of the development in this location. It's really down to the design and form of the development. Is it appropriate in this rural location, given the inspector's previous comments? And obviously, in terms of the officer's view, we consider it does address those concerns, Chairman.
Thank you. My Vice Chairman wishes to come back.
I'm just going to say, repeating what I've said before, it's a brownfield site. You know, you've got buildings there. It's not as if we're discussing whether or not. And as you so eloquently said, Chairman, the appeals officer, we can't argue against him. It's just impossible. We don't have that kind of power. So again, I move as recommended. Thank you.
I lament this because I used to use this nursery for my alpine plant, so it was sad that the lady unfortunately had to give up for ill health. So essentially, councillors, the officer's report says what is being proposed overcomes the urbanisation effect with the previous houses that we saw in his presentation. Now, you've got to agree or not agree. Does what is now proposed in front of us, the barn style houses, would you normally find them in the countryside, or would you normally find them in a urban environment? The previous houses, I thought, did not fit in, and I totally agree with the inspector on that. But unfortunately, he's hoisted us a little bit by doing what he's done. So we've got a recommendation to back the officer's recommendation. Do we have a seconder for the officer's recommendation? Councillor Sweatman. Okay, so we've got a proposal and a seconder. You've got a proposal and a seconder that this application is recommended to be approved subject to the conditions set out in Appendix A. Jen, could you go through the procedure, please?
Yeah, and that also includes the amendment to condition 8, and the deletion of condition 20. Okay, Councillor Allen.
Against.
Councillor Cartwright.
Against.
Councillor Coote.
For.
Councillor DeBell.
For.
Councillor Eggleston.
Against.
Councillor McNaughton.
For.
Chairman.
For.
Councillor Phillips.
Sorry, abstain.
Okay.
Councillor Pulfer.
For.
And Councillor Sweatman.
For. Sorry, didn't really got that.
Yeah, you did. You did the reverse of what you had.
Okay, so I made that 6 for, 3 against, and 1 abstention, and that's carried.
Okay, that application has been approved. Thank you very much. We'll get in there. Just another tricky one to go. So we're now on item 10. This is items recommended for refusal. This is DM 203456, land west of Kingwood Apartments, Rocky Lane, Haywards Heath. We've got, and this is yours, Caroline. So could you go through it, please?
Thank you, Chairman. It's just said that I have been disabled from sharing my screen. Sorry, please could I have access again so I can show the presentation?
You've now got access, I've been told.
Thank you. Okay, hopefully you can see my presentation.
Yeah, we can.
Thank you. So the application relates to land to the west of Kilnwood Apartments on Rocky Lane and Haywards Heath. and it seeks planning permission for the erection of 9 apartments within a single 3-storey building, as well as access, parking and landscaping. I would draw members' attention to the updater sheet. An additional reason for refusal has been proposed as the Section 106 agreement has not yet been completed for the affordable housing and infrastructure contributions. So the application relates to an area of land to the west of Kilnwood Apartments, which is within the red line boundary of the site. To the south of the site is the A272. To the west is the London to Brighton railway line, and north is the Old Rocky Lane alignment with a cluster of dwellings opposite that. The site slopes to the south-southwest, and trees are situated on the northern boundary to the west of the access are protected by a tree preservation order. The site is located within the built-up area of Haywards Heath as defined by the Mid-Sussex District Plan. It should be noted that the red line boundary of the site has changed during the course of the application to allow for some amendments, such as changing to the position of car parking spaces, and the site also forms part of the original site for the adjacent apartment development. That's shown on this slide here, the approved plan for the Reserve Matters application. So again, as you can see, this area to the west where the proposed development is to be located was shown to be landscaping. It was considered when assessing this application originally that the layout and landscaping of the current development, of the approved development, would assist in softening its appearance and would provide a cohesive scheme in the context of a semi-rural area. So this slide shows the proposed floor plans for the development as proposed. As you can see, there would be 3 flats located on each floor. Each would have 2 bedrooms, and it's proposed that 3 of these units would be affordable housing. This slide shows the proposed elevations for the flats. As you can see, the design of the flats would replicate the existing buildings, both in their form, choice of materials and detailed design. And given the consistent approach and design, no objections have been raised as set out in the report. This slide shows the landscaping plan for the proposed development, which has evolved across the course of the application. The landscaping scheme has developed so it now extends across the full southern boundary of the site. That's within the blue line boundary, shown by the mouse. And more planting has been included, as well as the repositioning of existing trees that were planted as part of the landscaping for the original development, as shown in the red circles. These are images of the application for context. These are images that were submitted as part of the application for context, showing a view from Rocky Lane as currently existing, including the proposed block, and as illustrated with landscaping as well. These are some photographs of this from within the site. As you can see, whilst it's generally level, the land levels do slope away as towards Rocky Lane. These are photographs from Rocky Lane. As you can see, the character of the area changes beyond the flats as the development falls away and it becomes less developed, and the area starts to have more of a rural appearance. And from this angle, you can also see that the development site is on higher land when compared to Rocky Lane. And also, due to the position of the existing flats, it's considered that the new block will appear further forwards. As such, given the height and the position, it's considered that the new block of flats would have a greater visual impact and would appear very dominant within the street scene. It is acknowledged that there is development opposite, but this is noted as being away from the highway by a verge area and is set at a lower level, therefore having a lower impact. It is acknowledged that landscaping has been proposed. However, we can only retain landscaping through a condition for 5 years. It's also considered that there would be an impact to the trees that are to be relocated that could damage their health. And it's also considered that there would potentially be future pressure on the landscaping as it matures and current residents lose their views towards the countryside. So as such, it's considered that the mitigation proposed is of limited weight and would not outweigh harm that has been identified and set out in the report as a result of the development. It should be noted that there are matters that weigh in the favour of the development. It would provide 9 houses, 3 of which would be affordable within the built-up area. Concerns have been raised by residents with regards to highways, noise, and with regards to the impact on the railway line. but no objections have been raised by the Highways Authority, the Environmental Protection Officer, or by Network Rail, and there would also be infrastructure contributions secured. Whilst these benefits are acknowledged, when considering the planning balance of the development, it is considered to have a significantly harmful impact to the character of the semi-rural area and would have an adverse impact on the existing trees that are to be relocated. As such, the recommendation before you is for refusal. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Caroline. Can we go back to the main screen, please? We have two speakers. Both are videos. And the first one is Peter Rainier, who we know quite well. He's speaking for it. So can I get Democratic Services to play the video? Oh, before we go any further, you might have noticed Councillor Eggleston has had to leave and he's offered his apologies. Okay. All right, so can we have the first video of Peter Rainier, please? He's in support. Yeah, there's some technical difficulty. Isn't technology wonderful? Here we go.
Good evening, my name is Peter Rainier. I'm the Director of Planning at DMH Stallard. If you've agreed with the recommendations for approval on your agenda, you will have by now granted planning permission for housing which is contrary to the fundamental spatial strategy of the local plan, outside the built-up area, within the high-wheeled AONB, in the countryside, midway between Sussex and Burgess Hill, in a much less sustainable location than that currently proposed at Rocky Lane. And in those cases, accepted schemes which involve the loss of trees and which involve mitigation through additional landscaping to improve the impact of those schemes. In this case, your officer recommends refusal, but accepts that that balance is a fine one. In weighing up the planning balance, it's considered that the loss of trees recently planted to be translocated and to be supplemented with a much improved planting scheme, the impact on the character of the area, which is described as semi-rural, but surrounded on three sides by housing, and on a fourth by the railway and the A272 and the bridge over the railway, and the loss of a downland view, which quite frankly is not impacted in any way, would be so great as to tip the balance against an approval, when the positives include development within the built-up area in accordance with policy. Within Haywards Heath, a Category 1 settlement, in accordance with policy DP6, windfall housing is supported in this sort of location. Proposal which in policy terms is preferable to less sustainable locations, or the allocation of further greenfield sites. The apartment building would reflect the design of the neighbouring buildings to the east, which is accepted to be of high quality. Proposed new trees are to be large specimens, 140 in total, 16 of which would be 4 metres high, and a mix of evergreen and deciduous. The delivery of an enhanced landscaping scheme across the wider site frontage. The provision of 9 residential units at a time when there is a general need for local authorities to significantly boost the supply of housing, and all in a sustainable location. Furthermore, 3 affordable housing units would be provided, as well as relevant contributions to infrastructure of over £70,000. I hope that you will agree that any harm is very limited, and it is firmly outweighed by the benefits of this scheme. Thank you.
Thank you. Unfortunately, my wife's speaking over to her rather deaf parents. I do apologise. if you do get some interference. The next is Nick Dexter. It's another video for and Democratic Services. Can you play the video, please?
My name is Nicholas Dexter, Director of Nicholas Dexter Studio, an award-winning landscape design company with 20 years experience. I also lecture at Plumpton College and the KLC School of Design and sit on the Mid-Sussex Design Review panel where we provide feedback on local planning applications. In response to the Rocky Lane Planning Committee comments, I'd like to respond to 2 points relating to our proposed landscape strategy. There are 13 newly planted trees relating to the original apartments, which need to be relocated to accommodate the new development. At present, these are very small trees, planted about a year ago, and are approximately 2.5 metres tall. Therefore, they can be happily transplanted without damaging their health, which Nicholas Jones, our arboriculturalist, has confirmed in writing. Furthermore, all planted stock is under a defect liability period, which stipulates that any plant that is found to be dead, dying, or defective within the first 5 years will be replanted. To provide additional screening and enhance the local ecology, we've suggested that the southern edge of the site is planted with about 140 new plants, including 34 new trees, hazel shrubs, meadow grass.
Can we stop the video? I don't think members are getting any benefit out of it because it keeps on stopping. So can we stop it? I don't think I've got his statement to read it out, but members, I think you've got the gist of what I was hearing. I think it's only fair for us to continue because we had so many interruptions then we just can't really listen to what he's got to say. Members, before we go, we're thankfully here with the original planning officer, Mr. Ashdown, who did the first site. And the reason why for flats, because I've just been going through the reasons to refusal, and it seems that both speakers seem to be really going on the loss of impact, the loss of the landscaping, but they're not saying much about the urbanisation. Mr. Ashdown, why weren't we given 4 units on this site as opposed to 4 blocks of flats instead of 3? Because I think you told me at my chairman's meeting you thought 4 was the wrong.
Well, thank you, Chairman. Well, essentially, the original scheme didn't only included up to, I think it's 37 units, 34 units, whatever you see on site now. So there was the 3 units or the 3 apartments that you see there now was what came forward as the reserve matter. There wasn't a 4th one. The 3 were considered acceptable. Obviously, that this part of the site where the application or new building is proposed was kept clear. It's sort of a buffer or a sort of edge to the western part of the site, adjacent to the railway as you then go out towards Burgess Hill. And certainly, as we set out in the report, we consider that the positioning of a building, although we're content with the design of the building because it replicates what's already on site, the position of a building in this location of this scale will have a detrimental impact on the character and appearance of the area. And although we recognise there are positives, we don't believe those positives outweigh the harm, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ashdown. Because if members go to page 175, it goes the reasons for refusal, and then halfway through it says also would also. So it's the additional part of it. So members, I'm in your hands. Councillor Coote.
Well, Chairman, I don't want to reiterate what Steve Ashdown has said. He's absolutely right. If it was supposed to have been there, it would have been there at the beginning. It's just another case of trying to squeeze buildings into places where you've got a bit of open land. And at the end of the day, I know Haywards Heath is not a countryside park, but it is in the country, and people move out here to breathe. And we can't keep on bunging buildings up. We've got to give people a little bit of space. If they don't need space, then they go and live in Walthamstow or Brixton or somewhere like that. When they move out here, they expect to have a little bit of air. And so I would move as recommended, Chairman. Did you get that?
I realise, yes, I did. I realised it was me who's muted. Do apologise again, because I'm trying to stop the background noise. Councillor Pulfer. And you are muted, Councillor Pulfer.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, I thought I'd clicked properly. I did declare earlier that I have an interest because it's part of the town, and I'm town council as well. I think what would be interesting if we could only see the video of some 4 years ago, where the developers told us that how good the landscaping was going to be, and I'm really encouraged to hear in the video that any trees which are dying will be replaced, because the majority of trees on that site are dying as we speak. And they were all put in there for all the reasons that the developers want to put the new ones in. Where the building is sited, it will not be good for residents, because the headlights coming up the hill will shine into their things. And I realise that's not a planning application, but I think the fact that it's overbearing and it's an overdevelopment of the site are reasons to do it. I support what the officers are saying. And I also think that just to give a quality of the presentation, there's a picture there of a virtually empty car park. If you were to go there at 7:10 this evening, Mr. Chairman, you would struggle to find a car parking space. And yet there's going to be a development here with no additional car parking. And in fact, it's going to be reduced. So all in all, Mr. Chairman, I shall be voting against it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. There's nobody else wishing to speak. I'll have my 2 pennies worth on it. I'm going to support the officer's recommendation for the reasons as outlined in the report. And yes, much has been said about the landscaping, what they're going to do, but you won't hide it. They're so prominent, these buildings. By the time the landscape is highlighted, it's the people who live in the flats want to take it down. Regrettably, we are going to lose 3 affordable housing, which is very regrettable. But I think in this case, I am going to support the officer's recommendation. Councillor McNaughton.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, again, I did venture to have another look at this one, having driven past it many, many times. You stop and look, and I think, well, is there any demonstrable harm on building another block on a bypass? And that's exactly what it is. It's on the bypass. But when you get there and look at it, they've blended in quite well now. And, you know, when you do drive into the car park and round the back there, I was lucky, I went during the day, so there was quite a lot of room. But it will be out of place. I think it will be so prominent. I think I have to then fall down on the officer's side and say, as much as I think it's it wouldn't be that demonstrable harm. I can't put my hand on the heart and say I would support it. So I think the officers have just about got it right. It is a borderline one, but let's fall down on the side of caution. And I think it would be an overdevelopment of the site, and it would be very prominent on the end of that row. So yeah, I'm quite happy to support the recommendation.
Yes, Councillor Mills, you're absolutely correct, because this block will be nearer to the road than the others, because the others are set back more. This is step forward. So I do believe that the officers have got this 100% right. So no, in the absence of can I have a proposer to support the officer's recommendation? Councillor Coote, you normally do so.
Chairman. I proposed it.
And a Councillor McNaughton to second it. Jen, could you do the honours, please?
Yes, so in accordance with the officer's recommendation, permission is refused for the reasons set out in Appendix A and the reason in the update sheet. Councillor Allen.
For.
Councillor Cartwright.
For.
Councillor Coote.
For.
Councillor DeBell.
For.
Councillor McNaughton.
For.
Chairman.
For.
Councillor Phillips.
For.
Councillor Pulfer.
For.
And Councillor Sweatman.
For.
Thank you, that's unanimous and carried.
This application has been refused. Thank you very much. Moving on, nearly finished. Item 11, which is other matters, I have none. And so I'm going to close the meeting. The time is on my computer 19:14. Can we remain in place until we've been confirmed that the live stream is ended? Thank you very much. And before we do that though, this is our last meeting in this political year. We got a new one in May, so I'm hoping that we will have the same faces if we go that far in our elections as well. So thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, may I say, I think you did very well in difficult circumstances.